Hello and welcome to the UK ORCLAPEX Meetup, 7th of April 2021. My name's Alex Turnbull. I work for Apex Evangelists. I'm a senior developer there. I've worked at Apex Evangelists for 6 years. We mainly do healthcare and pharmaceutical projects. And previous to that, I used to work at Capita, which was an outsourcing company. First up, we've got Mark Daynes, and he's going to be doing a presentation on the Faceted Search with cards in Apex 22, creating a low-code, high-efficiency interface. That'll be on for about an hour. We'll have a break for 5 minutes, depending on where we're at. And then we've got Mulvaney, and he's doing a presentation on Apex automations inside out. We're always looking for people to present at these meetups. We do normally have this at a venue in Leeds, but due to the current circumstances, we're doing this virtually. So if anybody would like to present, please let us know, and all levels of presentations are welcome. For future meetups, obviously with the climate changing all the time, just keep an eye out on Twitter and meetup.com to see whether we're going to be doing it at a venue or virtually. Okay. Right, and I'll now hand you over to Mark. All yours, Mark. You're on mute.
There we go. Right.
There we go.
I'm starting early then. Okay. Right. I'll just click on this and share it, and hopefully you can see my presentation. So any positive feedback to say that's appeared would be great.
Yep. We're there.
Right. Okay. Okay. So super duper. I'm going to talk about. Well, as Alex said, any level of presentations are welcome. So I'm going to just do a relatively short talk on cards and faceted search, which obviously faceted search came in a slightly earlier version, but cards came in 20.2. My name is Mark Daynes. I work for a company called Beyond Systems. We're based in Manchester. Been around since about 2006, but I've been involved with Oracle and Oracle products since I was an Oracle consultant way back in 1990. I'm an Oracle ace. I'm a really specialist in enterprise analytics. So all sorts of analytics and data visualization, but I do have quite an interest also in the sort of the visualization side in terms of the psychology of it, so like gestalt sort of theory. And getting people to use the sort of the tools to explore their own data and find their own things. So backed up with obviously spatial machine learning, that sort of side of stuff. I'm a big fan of user groups, and I do quite a bit of work for ODTUG, where I'm a volunteer for ODTUG. I've got a little Twitter handle on there, and I also keep a little website, DataVizMark, where I put some of my sort of visualization sort of side of things on there. There's a theme here. It's going to be guitar based. You might have spotted some sort of guitar equipment behind me, which my family are very keen on me playing. So this is me playing in a band. So kind of the concept around why. So I should say we use cards. We use this sort of tech in the products that we build. But initially, when I first got it, I did it to catalog my guitars because it seemed like a really great interface to be able to catalog search and then keep sort them up to date. So this is kind of like a presentation that I did when I first started using this. But I think if you've never seen it or never really used it, I think it does cover quite a bit of the initial content. So I'd say I've got some guitars. What I did was I took a picture of all my guitars behind me so I could sort of log them. So I've got various different sorts. These are some of them. So these are ones I took the pictures, and of course I can either stick them in the like a blob column, or I could put them into the actual Apex app itself, which is what we're going to go and do. But I just wanted to kind of go through and say, look, I kind of just for a bit of consistency, I took a whole load of sort of different photographs of some of the guitars that I have. I think that's enough. Blimey. Well, I think that's enough of them. So I said I work for a company called Beyond. We basically we do a lot of Apex. We build Apex products for pretty much for local authorities mostly. So it's to help people do sort of planning and budgeting, and then roll that out to like quite a lot of hundreds of users. And obviously Apex as a product scales really well for those sort of environment, and gives people you know, an interface that they can interact with really easy. We get some really great feedback from people using Apex as a product. We also do, of course, I say analytics. So we do all the sort of Oracle analytics from business into BIEE through to Oracle Analytics Cloud and Oracle Analytics Server. And obviously OTBI for the cloud ERP people, cloud ERP people as well. I'll skip past this bit here, it's a bit getting a bit too much. Right, so let's look at some cards and faceted search and how they play well together, which I think is quite important, really. So what is faceted search? If you've never seen it before, you probably have. So if you've been on sort of like a Curry's website or an Amazon website, you get some facets down the left-hand side, and they're the sort of things that really help you to sort of focus in on the things you're looking for. So you might be looking for a specific product within a specific price range. So say it's like you're looking for a laptop, you're looking for, I want something that's got between 16 and 32, perhaps gig of RAM, or a 500 size SSD or something. So I've got these facets down the side, which is sort of like dimensionality kind of really. And it's a really sort of an intuitive way of being able to interact with something without having any training or sort of teaching into it. And it's completely dynamic based on the data that's in the thing. So we'll have a look at some of the facets. In terms of cards, they're a new region, declarative, and they're sort of they're really flexible. And they're really useful as like a jump off point. So we've used them with sort of people's images on them to, in a big range, like a little hierarchy. So the cards are quite a nice visual method of interacting with the data. Actually, I've got a demo on apex.oracle.com, which when I just checked about 10 minutes ago had gone down with some sort of wasn't available, and some sort of odd thing coming up. So if you have a look at that, then we can hopefully be able to demo it. Or maybe just showing you sort of pictures of it if that comes up. But here's what I'm going to sort of go through creating. So it's like I've got my images of my guitars scattered about. I've got some little graphs and charts about them as well, which kind of come free with the product. By default, they'll pop up in situ, but you can put a div region in, and we'll have a look at that, whereby we can get the charts to pop up. And on the sort of the left hand side here, I've got my facets. So I've got, if I sort of look into this, where we're going to end up, I've got these facets down the left hand side. So I've got this sort of facet region. So I've got a search box which will search all of them, although you can put independent searches on each of the facets, which we'll have a look at. These are like the facets themselves. So I've got the different sort of like the makes of guitars and the type of guitars, and it's grouped them entirely based on the data that I got in there, which is why some are in uppercase and some are in sort of mixed case, because that's the data I got in the database, which we'll have a quick look at just so we understand sort of conceptually where that data is actually risen from. And there's also a nice little feature down here. Well, I think it's nice anyway, of this guitar facet. Well, I should say we'll do the next to each one. There's a pop up by default. You can turn these off if the charts aren't particularly suited. So I think when we've been using them in an application like a facet, we've got people who are searching for cost centers and data. So looking for cost centers and subjectives in an account hierarchy. So it's quite dry data in that respect when you're looking through, your budgets and your chart of accounts. And in those, they don't really want or see the need to have little pop-ups popping up. Let's look at a bar chart or a pie chart. So we've kind of taken those off, but you can have this chart. This charting ability is integral and is built in, kind of comes for free, which is nice. But there's also these things here called facet groups, which you can build, and they're picking out like Boolean values. So again, we'll have a look at the database. I've just got some var chars against little Boolean values against some of the guitars, saying, did I buy it new? Has it got a trem? And is it a bass? Yeah, so I just put them in. You can, and it's a nice way of sort of grouping them together to say, it's not just like the metadata of, what sort of guitar is it, or what price range is it is not got there, or what year was it made in. It's actually Boolean values, and I can put them there to toggle those on and off and highlight specific ones of those. So we'll have a look at those. That's the sort of the that sort of side of it, the faceted side of it. Looking at like the card region itself, the card elements. The cards have got, there's different declarative ways of doing this, and we'll have a look at some of the different ways that happens, but they've got like a title and a badge and a media element to it. So you can put links to videos in there, or put some sort of URL to something, or sort of media. Here I've chosen to use a kind of a photograph of the photographs we showed previously that I've loaded up, and a sort of description side of it here, and a subtitle. I put a little non-hot button on this one here, but I can have buttons on the bottom that do things. Now the cards themselves are interactive, and I'm also going to drill into that. So you can have different bits of the card that drill off to different things if you want to. So if I might want to be able to click on the description and it'll take me somewhere, or click on the sort of the year and that might take me somewhere else, or click on the actual image and take me somewhere else. So it has got that granularity of interactivity, if that's the thing. Or I can just have it the button and click on the button. And how you're going to use that, I guess, depends on your user base and what your users are like. For me, I quite like putting a button on there, because I can have a button if a user is going to use these things. It depends on the level of training you got. And as I say, sometimes when we're pushing things out to hundreds or thousands of people, training is a bit of a premium. So if you got something whereby if I click on this, it does something, and if I click on that, it does something else, and I click here, it goes somewhere else, then that requires a bit more training than having, them not doing anything, but you've got to put buttons on, and the button does what it says on the button. Yeah. But that potential is there. So that capability is there to have it drillable and clickable from different bits of it, but they're kind of the elements of the cards. And there's like 3 sort of default layouts that come with it. And we'll sort of have a look at, we'll have a look at those. So we're going to say, let's try and sort of build this up a little bit here. So let's kind of start by building it up, starting with the source, starting with the table. So I've got a table here behind it. Nothing more complicated here for this demonstration purposes than me having an ID, which has got a primary key on my table. The make of the guitar, the type of the guitar. I've got the year it was made. I'll talk about these Booleans here. So we've got these Booleans. Did I buy it new? Do I say, secondhand? Is it a bass, or does it have a trem on it? I've got the image, which is in here. I could have put them in as like a blob column and put the images embedded them in the database here. But this is just like a tag to say the name. So it's like the name of the file that I'm gonna bring in, because it's gonna pull the files. It's gonna pull the images off the off my actual workspace. There's a description, so I can put a description about the guitar and all stuff like that, and I put the country of origin in as well. So it's here is that data. So I can see my Booleans over here, and there's the sort of data. So I can see I've got quite a lot of Gibson guitars. I've got not very many Larave's or BC Riches, but I've got this is the year they were made. You can see I've been doing a lot of secondhand buying as well. But here's the images. So we'll have a look at this when we build sort of that string up to get the images back. And that's just I just put some chat in here about the guitar itself, which I can then sort of start to expand on and keep it as a record of the sort of the stuff that I do have. Okay, so they're the Boolean variables. So as you saw before, I took a load of independent photographs just down here off this thing here. So I just had sort of consistency of images. I've done them all as PNGs, apart from one I thought I'd do as a JPEG, just to make it a bit more, make it a bit more interesting. So I took the picture of the source images, and I've loaded them up. So now I've kind of loaded them up to the workspace. So let's go and create. We could go and create an application. Now I'm going to do this in a couple of different ways, just to show you if you've never really kind of done this before, to create the faceted search and the card region. So I'm just going to go through like the first one. I'm just going to go through the standard little way. Let's just go through the whiz of creating an application. So I'll go and create an application. I'll call it guitar facets. I'll keep it as like Vita for the time being. Yeah. And I'm just going to add a page to it. So click on that, add a page, and doof, it comes up here with faceted search in the list of things here. Now I could go here to create cards. We're going to start with faceted search. So I'll click on faceted search, and that'll give me the option here to start to put some things together, to add some facets to it. So there we go. I made that one. I put cards against that one rather than report. So I can. What that's done there is going to create a faceted. This is going to create a faceted search page with cards. So we'll create a faceted search by putting that on the left-hand side, and then create a card region. And when it puts the card region on the right, that's just going to show the detail of my. So I'll use the facets to do the searching, and then the cards are going to surface that data. So I could do it like a classic report, but I'm just going to flip this one here just to do it as a a facet with a card. I talked before about we saw like the makeup of the card where they had like a number of attributes to them. Well, a number of parts of the card. I know that the title and the subtitle and the description and stuff. So it gives me some options here just to sort of pre-fill these in. And this is very much sort of like the usual wizard-driven way of doing things, which is why we're going to do it a couple of ways. So I'll just go through there and add that as a page. I'll create that as an application. And when I run that application, it creates a first cut appearance of what that looks like. So I can see it's created some cards in a very basic style, yeah, on the right hand side, and it's given me a default total. So it says there's 18, and this is pretty much as I told it to do it. Put the title on it, put the make on it, put the four things on it, and then it's created here a bunch of facets down the left hand side. Which is kind of interesting. Well, we'll just have a look at the sort of the default facets here. So it's created it's looked at the data, it's interrogated it, and it's created some default facets. So it's created one, like for example, the make, and by default it'll look at like I think the top 5, and it'll create. So it's looked at the data. It's got make, it's got type, it's got year, and it's also done the description, which is kind of interesting because they're all going to be unique. But it's done that for the facets, but we'll drop in to have a little look at that in a second, because I hadn't done anything on that table. So when I say I hadn't done anything on the table, I hadn't put stats on the table. So I don't think the database knew much about what was actually in that. When we put stats on it and do sort of stats gather on it, and let it interrogate it, it will give us some different results. So we'll have a look at that. And on the right hand side, it's put the cards on, as you can see, in a quite rudimentary fashion. So that's just its first card. But let's go and do that in a slightly different way. We're just going to go and create a page in an existing application, and it gives me a different approach. So I go and create. So I've got the application. I'm going to go and create my facets in a different way, just by going and creating a new page in an existing application. So I'm going to go and create a report. It's going to give me an option. I'm going to change that to faceted search, which is what I want. And here, I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call this one Super Guitar Facets. As a way of naming that. I'm not going to associate. I'm going to stick it. Sorry, I'm going to associate. So I've already got this first one, this guitar facet. So we did as the default, as a defaulted one. But this one here, I'm going to go and create with call it Super Guitar Facets and just hang it off the home menu. Now, when it does that, obviously it gives me a whole bunch of other things to say. Where's my data? Yeah, is it from a REST data source? Am I pulling that from somewhere really interesting? Am I pulling that from somewhere really interesting, like a cloud ERP system or something like that? I'm going to just do this. I've got options here. Previously we did it as cards. I'm going to do this one as reports. So I'm going to have a faceted search with reports on the right hand side, which I'm going to then go and change to a card. But we'll see here that by default, and it's put a whole lot of text in here about what it's trying to do here. Yeah, it says, I'm going to look at some facets here, and I'm going to give you. Now you can go and create your own facets. Yeah, but by default, it will go and create some for you, and you can go and toggle these off if you don't particularly want these ones. What it's doing is it's looked at the data and said, I think these are, based on what I know about your data, I think these are good candidates for facets. Now, if you look down here, you'll see it's got distinct records here, 0, and so it's like there's something it doesn't quite know about country, it doesn't really know much about description. So I'm going to go and click on this refresh button over here. What it's going to do is going to go and refresh the stats. I'm going to go and analyze the table, and what that does is when I do that, it does a refresh and look at the stats on the table. It turns off that description. It doesn't give me a description because it doesn't really think that's particularly appropriate, because there's a load of distinct values in there, but it thinks that country might be a better idea, and it's also suggested here that that's a checkbox, and I think that's actually really appropriate. So whilst I can go and edit these in situ in the table itself, it's quite interesting to see how it's actually done that guidance for me for the first cut, and I think recommended a pretty appropriate bunch of things. So I'm going to go and I'll just point out that one's a bit different. I'm going to go and create that, and obviously go and create that page. It's given me the facets it's talked about here. So where it had the, I said by default it gives you a search column, but it's given me this sort of make and type and year, made in country, and these are the things that we had on the facets. So that's all looking exactly how I would expect it to be, which is nice. So when I go and look at the report here, what it's done here is it's done fairly similar to what it did before when I did it the other way with cards, but I do have different things on the left hand side. So I've now got this. I've now got country down here, which is the country of origin. So I've got all my facets down here, which it's done really nicely. It's done the years, and it's actually hard coded those years into the thing, so you can go and kind of change those. And on the right hand side here, it's giving me like a classic report here with showing that data. So as I interact with that by say clicking on Gibson, so if I just clicked on Gibson at the top there, it's put in by default all these totals, and again that's another configurable thing. You might want to see all these total row counts and all these totals of these independent attributes. If I click on that Gibson there, that then just restricts it immediately by the 8 things that are Gibson. And again, if I go and click that to like a subtype of that, Les Paul, which is for them, I only get the ones that are Gibson Les Paul. So that is for, and you can see here as you click on the facets, it's by default putting them up here, so you can see what you have selected along the top, and I can start taking these off. So that's the faceted search working with a sort of classic report here. As I said, it's got these little charts. So and I think this is like a change. I think that came in with 20.1. That it pops up these little charts by default, and they could either be a bar chart or a lovely bar chart. So I'm just showing a couple of these popping up here, and by default they will pop up in situ here. But I'll just show how we can just shuffle those off to the top, which is actually the manual's really good. So if you look at the guide online, it's all kind of takes you through how to do that sort of stuff as well, and move these. So that's the documentation's pretty good. One thing, if I bring up like the little theme roller here, I'm just going to tweak the theme, because what kind of a fun thing that came in with 20.2 was a light version of Redwood. So if you've seen like the Oracle Redwood themes coming through strong and everything, I do quite a lot of work with cloud ERP and stuff. So that's why I think that's kind of where I first saw it originate. So if you just go and click on this, I'm just going to go and click on the theme roller here and toggle it to Redwood, toggle the theme to Redwood Light, just to get away from that little Vita theme, and just see some of the differences here. Running in Redwood. So we're going to continue in that sort of Redwood theme as we kind of build this along. So I'm now going to go and edit this page. So if I'm just going to do a quick edit, so I've got the basic facets on the left hand side, got a nice report on. I've got a report on the right hand side here. I'm going to go and edit it. So here we go. Pops up as we saw before. Facets. The facets are here. And if I look at the attributes, there's a whole bunch of attributes it gives me for these facets. So you can like batch facet changes. So these are all in the guide, and they're quite interesting. Because I think what we found is when we had a lot of data, sometimes every time you click on something, it'll refresh that it'll refresh that view. So whether that view on the right hand side is a report or a card or whatever it is, it's refreshing that. Now you might want to say, don't do that. Let me batch up my facets, and just let me manage that. Let me manage that process so it isn't as interactive, but it takes kind of a bit of a load off the server a bit. So I could say, I'll go on to click that one, then press it, and if I do that, if I toggle that batch, it'll create me like a little apply button, and it'll apply those facets as a group. And the other bits and pieces are just, where I want to show the facets, and stuff like show the row counts or don't show the row counts. So I might want to have them. And those charts there were popping up by default, the top 10, but you might want them to be like just show the top 5, keep them a bit smaller, or even widen them out, make them bigger, those charts. Obviously, if it's a pie chart, you start getting a lot of bits of pie in it. It becomes probably less useful for me. I prefer using a bar chart. And actually, the show charts, we say pop up. That meant that when we clicked on that little icon to say pop me a chart up, it'll do it in situ there. But I can actually go and create a region, and I can put in here to where that region, tell it to pop up those charts at the top or at the side, or wherever the region is really. So we can have a look a little bit at that. But it's quite nice that they're all kind of bunched together, so the facets themselves are quite configurable as a grouping. So we've got we'll have some attribute. We've got an attribute per facet, so each one of these has a thing that we can change the way that it works. These are just like a grouping of things, so they apply to all of the facets. Facets as a group. So if I click on, for example, one of the facets, which is the maker guitar, so it might be a Fender or a BC Rich or something, I can go and change all of these things here. So I can like sort the facets. So when you saw them coming up there, the higher things you can have like these ones here, sort by top counts. So if I got like more Gibsons than anything else, it'll bring them to the top to bring them to my attention. So they're the most populous ones. Or I can sort. If I don't do that, it'll sort it alphabetically. So that'll sort in a kind of an alpha in an alpha fashion. So I can kind of do these things here. When I got like client side filtering and things like that. So obviously 5, that's a maximum it's showing me, so it doesn't fill up the entire real estate. So I could put like 20 in there. It would give me like 20 of whatever the make is, and that might be more appropriate. I mean, that does give you quite a decent level of control, because you might know your data better than anybody else. So you can like harness that to tweak those and finesse what's actually being shown outside of the defaults. So if you only ever have like 2 or 3 things in one of them, then you can crush that down a bit. And some of the things we've got more, you might want to show more for whatever that reason might be. Then that's a great thing. But kind of by default. And this is like turned off by default, the client side filtering, which lets you then type in some words. So if you have, by default, that's not on, that's only at the top. So at the top level, you can do like a search for something, but on each of these facets, if you turn on like this client side filtering, you can allow the users to type in text into here, and it'll search those facets. So I think I've got like an example here of client side filtering. This is like by default, we sort like this. So, and this is ordered it by number as well, because that's what it kind of doing, sort by the top counts. And now if I go and toggle that client side filtering on, I get this little filter here that appears on here, so I can start searching. I can do a little search on that data, which really probably helps if I've got quite a lot of data in those things. So all these little toggles are well worth looking at and having to play around with both on the grouping basis and on a facet by facet basis. I guess it differs for your data. So when I say we can tell where the charts appear, this is just something I've just put into this this presentation. I thought might benefit from it. I can say, you know, select it and put this facet dashboard area, so I can go and create this dashboard area. So I can go and create a new region, yeah, and I put this like div ID in here, and so it's kind of linking that to that, so that when if I go and put that region then and put my charts area at the top of my report, when I click on the charts, they start appearing in here. So I can every time I click on one, it'll appear, and I can turn them off, just so it nicely sort of groups them together. If you want your charts to appear, or wherever you might want your charts to appear, that functionality exists. Okay, right. So by default, it was creating those facets for me, and I created those, and it created like four or five facets. What was really good for Boolean is the ability to create, and I think this might have come in 2022 actually, the ability to create these things called facet groups. So I just go and say, go and create me a facet group in the facet section here. And this is just showing it coming up, obviously it'll come up as new when you create it. And what I've done there is I've just created 3 checkboxes based on those columns. So I've got this facet group. So now on my facets, and these are the Boolean values. So I just want to have the checkboxes. So I could say, show me everything guitar bought new, everyone with a trim and all that. So this nice little facet group appears down here. So when I go and run the report, that'll appear on the bottom. So here it is, for example. So if I can just say, click on, has it got a trem? So if I don't know which of my guitars have trems or not, then that'll appear there, and I can quickly see which guitars I've got that got a trem, and that's all part of this lovely little sort of facet group that you can create down the bottom. Right. So let's flip that classic report to a card and start looking at how these cards are working. So if I go on, it's currently set to classic report. If I go and flip that to a card, we can go and see something a bit more I won't say interesting, because the report's really interesting, but we'll see how we can start to get it to interact with a card. So where we did it declarative, where we did it through like a wizard before, it kind of filled in those things. So it says, oh, you know, you can put make as your title, or, you know, whatever. Here we can sort of fill these in ourselves. So what I've done here is the title I'm going to put in as the
Hello. Oh, I think we might have lost Mark there. I'll just message him, see where we're at. There you go. Hi Mark, you all right?
hello.
Oh, there we go. We just lost you for a moment then.
So disappeared there.
Yeah, there we go.
So if I share that, what happens where I live? I think everybody comes back from work about this sort of time and turns on all these streaming services, and I lose my internet connection. Hopefully that's back and working. So that's the title, in case you're interested. That's the subtitle, and the body is the description. There's the 3 things I set up so far, and that's exactly as I want it. So what about putting some images in? Well, remember we had all of these images that I'd taken pictures of these guitars. I've loaded them all up. So what I've done is I've just loaded these up to workspace images. I could put them app images, as I say. I could have put them into the database. I've loaded these quite large files. Now I'm looking at them. Probably, maybe it's not that appropriate for using the, but they're quite. But I load these PNGs into this guitars, and then they've all got the name. So these are the, you'll remember these names here because these are the names that I've tagged into the data, so I can kind of pick these up. So these are just workspace images into the. So what I can do is I can start to reference these. Now the way I can do that is currently when I built it through the Wiz, it's just created as a local database from that table to hold it from. Now I'm just going to go flip that to a SQL query rather than table space, and this is just my way that I did it when I was creating this. Obviously, there's a number of different ways of doing this, and what I did was I just changed this thing here to just so I could show this happening. I just put in the location where that image is stored in the workspace, which is merely this with the, as we saw before, it's just here really, yeah. And then obviously that's the name of the thing there. So I just tagged that with the image name that's in the database. So that's going to come back and give me the put the directory in there and the image. So, and I'll call that special image details. So that is the location of where the image is stored on my kind of Apex server. So I should be able to pick that up now. So here, what I can do is, you'll remember when we had a look at the attributes of my card, I had the title was the make of the guitar. Now what I've done here is the subtitle. I've not got anything. The body, I got the description. Secondary body, I'll put type in. I put on an icon and badge. I've put year made as the badge. So we'll start to see the year made appear in the badge place. And what I can do also is it's given me media. I'm gonna say this is all declarative, so I'm not gonna have to code anything here, which is what I'm showing. So I'm not like dropping into JavaScript or I'm not even doing anything sort of CSS or anything to make things look a bit more flashy. This is just kind of declarative, moving it forward in a declarative manner. So in the media, I've got a choice here. So I say, yeah, I could have stuck it in the database and run it as a blob column, or picked it out for some URL somewhere. But I'm going to use it as an image URL, and I'm just going to pick out that the one we did in our select statement. So that will have that's got the full location enough to pick out that image from the workspace file. And I've just said make it fit and make it auto and everything. So it's kind of, and there's no CSS or anything around it, which I kind of could do to that image. So that's just going to pull it out of the images. So when I run that now, that's now done exactly what I've told it, and it's changed very slightly. So if I've gone and clicked on my three things down here, so I'm going to say, oh, show me all the flying V's I've got, an exotic shape or look like an explorer. So it's built out, and you'll see this is checked that the card changed slightly because it's now got in the middle here in this slot the image, and it's also in the badge area. It's popped up the years. So I did that because I thought it popped quite nicely. And I say I've not put any CSS. I've not done anything here to over and above what it's done from a declarative point of view either. Yeah, it's resized images. It's made everything fit, and it all looks quite tidy. And it's put like the type of guitar down the bottom. So all the way that I did that as a declarative thing from a SQL statement, it's done all of that. It's still telling me the row count's 5, which entirely is. And I could go and turn that off. But I think like as we're moving forward, it start getting a bit sharper. So I can go and change these here to. I'll talk about this global search feature at the top here. So I've got this search. Let's have a look at that. So if I typed in like Canada, it's going to pick out anything that's got any of the guitars, any word text of Canada in anything. Yeah. So and this is brought forward those two here. And remember, we could have we turn client side filtering on these individual ones here. I can sort of narrow that granularity down to just searching in these specific areas as well. If if I wanted to be able to do that. The user experience, so is highly flexible, even declaratively. And I just wanted to kind of show this. I'm not going to go and do like a deep dive into anything too sophisticated here, but in the terms of like when I'm looking at the cards region, I can do it so they're kind of like the flow, or they're in like this horizontal thing, or I can sort of grid them. So here they're kind of working like horizontally, or I can just go and kind of flip that into different styles. So when I say styles, when the cards template come with like three different styles and three sort of different layouts of where things are. So you can see that's kind of like layout default. I think this is I think that I've got this is style A here, where it looks a bit different. So the styles are a bit different, and then you can go and tweak bits of those as well to move things about to make them, you know, be what you want them to be. Which is pretty nice. Now, how about the car? Looking at cars, all fine and that, but it really does benefit from some interactivity. The most basic interactivity, and I say basic, but perhaps it's the more obvious and clear activity, is to put a button on something. It takes up a little bit of real estate, but you know, you can put whatever text you want in there and make it hot or not. So if I go in here and I just go and create an action, so I can go and put like a button on there. So I've got a little button. Now when I go and create the button, when I go and create the action, and I've got some options here. So I can make either the full card clickable, or we're going to look at that. I can make just the title clickable, and I can make the title clickable. Yeah, so I can have a full card. I can make the full card clickable. I can make the title clickable, and the title go and do something. I can make the subtitle clickable. I can make the media. So all those parts of the card, I can make them all do something different. So we'll start with the button. So I'm going to select the button to start with and put a little button on the bottom of my card to give a directive to people. So I'll go create a button and just say, go redirect to a page in the application. So I'll quickly beaver it away and go and created a page which is just a simple page which just shows the data. So it's going to let me update the data in the application. So when I click on a card, it should take me with the context to go and click to go and bring that data back. So I create this little button called Update Info. So here's my card. I go and click the button called Update Info. I can have that direct me to a different page in the application that I've called Edit Guitars, and I've just put the data of the guitar in there. So I made this, so none of this is clickable. This is just for an image. I created the button. So when I click on the button, it now takes me over here. I can edit the data in the card. I can edit the data, underlines it. I can either apply the changes or not, and come back. So that's the first sort of stage and style of interactivity. But it doesn't. Your actions don't need to be based on buttons. You can actually start clicking parts of the card itself. So, for example, I can have a button that does something, but then I can also say, well, I want an action on the title. So if I click on the title, I want it to go and do something. And if I go and click on the media, the picture of the guitar itself, I want that to go and do something else. So I mean, I might have that going off to perhaps some website to look up something about that guitar. Yeah, I might have. So I've got the ability to perhaps have something whereby I've got the buttons that go and change my data about the guitar, but the media or something else go and look up that guitar and go and find something off the internet about it, or do something else. So here I've set it up. So I've got the button. The button, when I click on the button, it redirects to a page in the application. I've got, and I've just done this here, so it's just going to my website. If I click on the title, it's going to go to my website. And if I'm going to go and click on the media, it's going to go to somewhere else. So I've now got this level of granularity whereby I've got multiple actions I can take on that card, and I can go do different things depending on where I've clicked. And this is kind of where I was alluding to at the beginning of this, going, that's quite a sophisticated functionality, really. But if you're going to roll something like that out to a user base, they need to be aware, I think, that how and be trained in when I click on this, or if I click on that, it does something else, and if I click on this, it goes somewhere else. So that's why, you know, I kind of do like buttons a bit. So here, for example, that's the title. So if I click on the title, yeah, I can click on the media is here. That's the media, and then best thing is that button. So all of these are going to different things. So depending on where I am, I can have a different level of control about where I direct somebody. And it isn't just like an all or nothing thing. As I said before, each one of those things can be created independently to go and do something and go somewhere else. So if I make some kind of further tweaks to that application, I can get it looking like this. So this is kind of like where we've kind of built it. So we've got the facets down the left hand side. We've got a facet group working really nicely down the left hand side. If we do that sort of div and put that region in that, and put the region in the top there, when I'm creating these, when I click on these little charts, I can have those charts appearing on the top. And I can have a whole field of real estate here, and I can update the info and click off to something like that. And we've done that kind of all like declaratively, and yet I think it looks really quite sweet because it didn't take a long time to do it, and to get something up to that sort of level of speed, especially if you're going to do like a proof of concept or something, it can be really quick and effective and visually stimulating, and also have that sort of level of interactivity that prior to having certainly faceted search involved, it would have been quite a stretch. I think it makes it looks quite modern, and I say we're using this in our applications, and it's working really well. If I had like a summary to it, then there's obviously some. I'm going to go through all these things here, but there's a great URL here about what's kind of new in 20.2. If I'm going to look at the 20.2 features, where the kind of cards come from, and the sort of the faceted search enhancements. So if you have been using faceted search in an earlier version, there's a bunch of enhancements that are worth looking at. But something that I thought of that I just want to sort of like really cover is that when we look at the charts, the pop-up charts, it's like, just because they're there, do you really want them? Do you really want the users clicking on them and doing anything with them? Because sometimes it might be worthwhile just kind of not having that. That facet, as I say, that facet interactivity is like by default it is kind of live, and if you're doing lots of danger, do you want to let people batch those up? And I think that's going to be sort of application specific. And ordering the facets, it's something to be aware of. You can kind of order it, do you want it alphabetical rather than the number? The higher the number in that category, rise to the top. You got some sort of things to kind of think about there, and not just kind of take the options. Looking at cards, yeah, we've used avatars of people and no images and stuff like that. And about that sort of clickability and drillability is that it is really flexible, but I guess you've got to go sit back and think how your users are going to best interact with that and create the best experience from how your users are going to want to do that, especially if you're rolling it out to kind of a lot of people. And that was pretty much me. It was my kind of whistle stop tour through faceted search and cards. I hope you found it. If you haven't used it before, I hope you found it like something that you might think, oh, actually, that looks like something we could possibly get engaged with. And thank you very much. Really, that's pretty much me. If there's any sort of questions about things.
We've had a few questions in the Q&A, and we've answered most of them, Mark. Somebody did ask, will the presentation be made available? So we are recording this, and it'll be available on YouTube.
There we go then.
Will you be able to share your slides at all, Mark? Or
yes, I can't see why. I can't see why not. Because if you've recorded it, it's coming on YouTube. I can't see why people can't have the chat.
Cool.
Can't have the slide. Yeah.
We'll get that on to meetup.com. Okay. Okay, we're on to Matt now. Matt, if you want to take over.
Yes, let's get set up. Right. So I hope you can see my screen. I'll start then. So yeah, I'm Matt Mulvaney. I work for a company called Pretius, and this presentation is called Apex Automations Inside Out. So I want to teach you and show you all about this new feature in Apex 28.2, which is Apex Automations. So I'll just do this slide quite quickly. So it's about me and about Pretius. So we have a team of over 140 IT experts and almost 30 Apex developers now. We offer outsourcing of those teams and software development process. We're all based in Warsaw. However, we act globally. So we've got clients in Europe and America, in Asia, all over. You may be familiar with our Apex plugins. We've got some commercially supported plugins available at apex.world, so check those out. And we also host the translateapex.com project, which gives you a head start in translating your Apex applications. And myself, I've got over 20 years of Oracle and PL SQL development experience. 13 of those years were in Oracle Forms. 7 of those were or are Oracle Apex, starting with version 4.2, and I've worked on every single version of Apex ever since then. Okay, so this presentation will be a traditional based presentation. There'll be some slides going over the theory, and then I'll spend a lot of time in a demo application. And then afterwards, we'll talk about use cases where you can apply these Apex automations. And there's a frequently asked questions section. So in preparation for this presentation, I asked the team about what they thought about Apex automations and what they would like to know from it. And I also had a number of my own questions as well. So we'll cover those in the frequently asked questions section, and then we'll wrap it all up at the end in a summary. Okay, Apex automations, you say. So you may be familiar with scheduling of PL SQL in the database. So you would normally use something like DBMS job or DBMS scheduler, where you have a frequency or schedule where PL SQL is run. So you might have, for example, things run in the night, things run every month or every year or twice a day, whatever. So Apex Automations provides this user interface for the scheduling of an execution of PL SQL, and it runs in the context of your application, which makes it a little bit different from DBMS job and DBMS scheduler. So how you find these automations are in the shared components area. So you have to go into your application and then click on shared components. And then on the top left-hand part of your screen, there's a box called application logic. And along with build options, everything which starts with A is in that group as well, including automations. So when you click on automations, you get to see your list of automations. Now, pretty much everything in shared components works this way. You click on the component, you see an interactive report, and then you click into the detail, and this is no different. So you click on automations, see your automations, and I've got 4 automations there. Now, these final columns will be familiar if you've ever worked with DBMS scheduler. You've got schedule status, whether it's active or disabled, the last run date, the next run date, and then there's some Apex type things as well, which I'll go over, and there's opportunity to run there. Okay, so I'll spend a bit of time talking about the anatomy of Apex automations. So this is how I understand Apex automations to work. And I've put it in a diagram form, so it's easy to explain. So it starts with a schedule. So the schedule can be on demand. So whenever you decide to run it, and that is in PL SQL, or it can be scheduled. So like I explained earlier, it can be weekly, monthly, annually, etc. Then there are some conditions, and these are pretty much the same, well, they are the same as the Apex conditions that you are familiar with using Page Designer. And there's build options. So a build option, if you're unfamiliar with that, that's just a switch true or a false, whether that component is active in your application or not. So those two things, conditions and build options, determine whether that component is active. So when that schedule kicks in, either on demand or scheduled, you've got these things called actions. The actions are initiated on one of these three things. So let's just jump ahead. Actions are PL/SQL actions for now, but it looks like they will be extended to some of the MLE components. So you could, for example, run some JavaScript in the server. And these actions, you can have many of them. I'm representing three here. These PL/SQL actions can be either local, so on your database you're connected to, or REST-enabled SQL. And if you're unfamiliar with that, that's like the successor to DB links, where you can run some SQL or PL/SQL on a remote database and get the results back. Okay, let's go back a step now. So these actions, these PL/SQL actions, are initiated on one of these three things. So let's say there are query and non-query. So automations are in these two flavors, like query and non-query. So there's query, which can be based on a SQL statement, of course, or a REST-enabled SQL in a remote database, on a REST data source, which is what my demo app will be. Now, if you do it for query, these actions fire for every single row that is brought back in your query. And it goes through every row until it either reaches the max number of rows to process, which you define in your automation, or it reaches the final row. And then you've got an opportunity to commit after each row, or commit when everything's done. So the non-query ones are the function returning Boolean. So this is returning a true or false, and that's determined by PL/SQL, either local or REST-enabled on your remote database, or it's always. So that's like a true that's always set on. So you might use an always for an on-demand. That would be a typical use case. Okay, on each step here, there is code blocks. So there is initialization. Again, it's PL/SQL. And then before your rows, which only kicks in for query-based automations. And then there's cleanup code right at the end. And then your choice, commit each row or commit once. If it encounters an error, these PL/SQL actions, then you can ignore it, which is the default. And all errors will appear in this execution log anyway. Or you could say, well, it's pretty critical. Is this error? I'm going to abort. So stop the schedule. We'll try again next time. And the schedule wakes up again and has another go at it, but it may abort then. Or you can go nuclear and disable the automation. So that aborts the schedule and it doesn't try next time because the schedule will be disabled. You've also got this execution log. So you've got a start and end timestamp. This is an interactive report. So you can do some math on that and get a computed column and try and work out how long that schedule actually took. And you've got statuses. So you'd hope for a success. Sometimes you get failure. And there's some other ones like incomplete and abort and all these ones. And then you've got successful rows and error rows, which only appear for the query-based ones. And you've got your messages, just like a debug log. You can put your own messages in there and write those out. So that's the anatomy of a Apex automation. Let's have a demo. Let's do our first automation, and I'll show you in how those work. Let's zoom in a little bit. So I'm going to go to automations, and I've got my automations here. So I'm ordering by, well, the order is by next run, and that's the default. So when I first looked at this, I thought, hey, it's not alphabetical. Everything's alphabetical. Why isn't it ordered like that? Well, I suppose I could order by that if I wanted. So I'm going to look at this one, 0 log. It's got a name. It's got a static ID. So the static ID is, if I want to call it on demand, I would use that static ID. So it's an on demand, not scheduled, and it's an always. And I've got one action here. So can you see my action? No, you can't, because I think there's a little bug in Chrome or something. If I just move the mouse wheel a little bit, oh, there it is. There's my new action. My action is executed. My error handling is ignored, which is the default. I've got a little bit of this code here because it's called in these code blocks. So remember that diagram? I've got my initialization before rows and cleanup. So I can call any procedure here that lives on the database, or any PL SQL which lives in this block here. So I'm calling this package and this procedure loginfo. So this is part of a new API. Let's have a look at that. So in Apex automation, we've got log error and loginfo and log warn. So I'm going to use the loginfo. So it writes into that execution log. So you might have seen something like that before. You might have been using Apex debug, and you've got error and info and warn, but it's not prefixed with log, even though some are prefixed with log. So you need like a memory system to remember. If you're using automation, prefix with log underscore, and if you're using debug, don't bother. So I'm using loginfo on there. Right, and a little note to myself. Let's get the comment. Any typos here will result in automation not executing. So if you can write some code here, tick that box to see if its validation is successful. If you don't, your automation will not run, and you will not be able to find out why unless you debug every single thing on the page, and because I've been through this. So and my action, I can have lots of actions, but I've just got one, and this is going to do some more debugs. So this has got an action, it's local database, and you can see the language is PL SQL. You've got possible future possibilities in there for JavaScript. And then I've got, let's experiment now. So I've got log error, log info, log warn. Let's just put some messages out, 1, 2, and 3. That's all good. So I'll just cancel back out of there, made no real changes. Right, so normally in a shell component, when you press save changes, you go back to the report, or you can click this button, return to page, and you stick on that page. If you press save and run, it ignores that tick box. And I'd like it now to go to my execution log. It doesn't. So I've got to go navigate around. So what I tend to do now is right click on automation, the breadcrumb, open in a new tab, and then click on execution log, and hopefully I've got a success. So this is my timestamp, my automation name is success, good. Successful rows and error rows. Well, remember, this is an on-demand one. It's not query based, so I don't get any rows here. And I've got my messages. And I can purge log. So I can choose my automation to purge. We could maybe just try purging them all. Log for automation cleared. I didn't actually do that. So I thought that was clear them all. In fact, for a bug fix or a later version, you either need a validation on there, or asterisks on there, or select clears all, or a clear all. That'd be quite nice. So I can clear this one, like the seed and publish one, and I can do it again, even though I've got no logs. So this one, let's go back to this one. This automation 0 log. Let's look at those messages that it was written. So you see they're all on the same timestamp, all exactly to the same second. So I've got my messages out. I've got error, and I've got log, info, and I've got warn. And you see the message type here, error, info, and warn. The primary key values for that query-based one, but this is not a query-based, so I get nothing there. So this looks good. However, because these were all on the same second here, and it was ordering by that, I was getting my messages out in just like a random order, and that's wasn't too happy about getting my messages out in a random order. I'd like to get them out in the actual time that they came out. Oops. Okay, so and furthermore, I'm missing one, aren't I? I'm missing 0 log. I thought I had that in the code here, log info. So I don't actually get to see that message because log info you can only call in the context of an action. Yeah, so I can't do any of that. So I'm going to comment that out, and I'm going to use my own utility package. I've created this APX automation util. So I'm going to like stash, so keep a message in my pocket, just hold it in my bucket. And then in here, I'll pull it out of the bucket and log it in the execution log. So without saving changes, I'm going to click here, and I can assure you, even though you've not seen any saved changes, that it is saved. It definitely is saved. I'm going to comment these, and I'm going to use these. So I'm going to use my own message now, and I've been passing a parameter of type. So much easier there. And that log just takes it out of the bucket and shows it on the screen. So let's apply those changes. Save and run. Aha, this happens now and again. Usually if you're a bit quick, it happens. I don't know what it's talking about, but if I press save and run again, it's like nothing ever happened and it works. So if I click on execution log now, I've got my log, and look at that, I've got 4 messages. That's exactly what I wanted. And I've put this order on here, so I can change the order to order now by message, and now I'm guaranteed to come out in the right order now. So let's go back to the presentation. So this is the util package. So when it stashes the message, it puts it in this package header, because I know when that schedule runs, it creates a session with the database, and it runs through all the initialization, before rows, evaluation of the actions themselves, the cleanup code, all in one database session. So I can persist things in this package header. I've got stash, I've got log, and I've got my own message as well. I've got something clever called write debug, and I'll show you more on that a bit later on. Okay, let's do a real life use case. So this is called Project Nextbike. So you might have heard of Nextbike. So Nextbike allows you to hire bikes around Europe, maybe beyond Europe, for a small fee, and you get to ride a bike around that city. And I think the same company is in London for these bikes. So this is my use case. My kids want to ride in a cargo bike. So this is the bike station near me, just run from my house. It's been branded in the city colours. It's got solar panels for the hire station, and these are all the bikes that are available there. Now, there are classic bikes, and this last bike here is called a cargo bike because it's got this box on the front, and what you're supposed to do is put your shopping in there and a heavy load and cycle it around. And it's got 3 wheels. When you scan it with the app, it's got this QR code here, and it's got one here as well, so you can scan it, and then the unlock, you can see the lock there, and you can take it away. But my kids want to actually sit in this cargo box, and they want me to cycle them up and down the street here. But this bike is incredibly rare, so whenever they want to go cycling, I have to browse this app, refresh it, trying to find out if this bike's ever there or not. And someone could take it and you miss out. So I'm going to use an automation to email me when that cargo bike is available. Yeah. So this, believe it or not, this is a live action webcam in my browser right now, even though it's dark outside, of the cargo bike in this station. So it's, I know this bike is there, 12620, that's the bike that I want. So I'm going to use, of course, Apex. I would be using apex.oracle.com, although it's down. So I'm going to use my own Docker image. I can use Apex automations. I'm going to be calling the Nextbike API by a REST web module. So this API isn't really publicly available, but some clever guys in GitHub have reverse engineered it. So they've documented how it's called, how you get the API key, how you use a map search to search for a country and a place. So it can bring back the list of bikes there. Now, when it comes to email, I'm going to use an email template, and it's so easy with email templates. So rather than a plain text email, I want to give it a bit of a wow factor. I want to see a nice email there. And a bit like the presentation we saw earlier, I'm going to use a faceted search in the cards region to visualize that the bikes are there. But I've got some requirements. I've got 4 requirements. So I only want to be emailed when there's a cargo bike available. I don't want to be emailed every 5 minutes and say, sorry, there's no bike. I just want one email when there's a cargo bike available. And I want the email to tell me which bike number it is, because it might have dodgy brakes, and I know the bike number. The bike number is actually the primary key. All the bikes in Europe have the unique bike number. So it might have dodgy brakes, and I don't want that bike. Number 3, if, for example, 5 incredibly rare cargo bikes appear, I don't want 5 emails telling me there's 5. I just want one email saying there's a cargo bike, go get it. And also, if my schedule runs every 5 minutes, I don't want spamming with emails telling me there's a cargo bike available every 5 minutes. I might not feel like cycling that day. So how about it runs every 5 minutes, but if it sent me an email in the last hour, then go to sleep for the next 5 minutes. And so at most I'll get an email every hour. Okay, let's look at the demo. So first thing we're going to look at is the API. So this is the API. You type in the country and the place, and you know, there's a name of it, there's the time zone, there's websites and phone numbers, all sorts. A bit about the city. There's 4 places in my city, and here's the places. And if I search for that bike, yep, that bike is available. Bike type 104, which is a cargo bike. It tells you if it's active, if it's got an electric lock or battery. It's got some electric bikes around the city. Okay, the next thing I'm going to show you is loading that into the web source module. So I copy this URL, and then I go to the web source modules, which is down here. I press create, and I go through all the wizard. And it's a very basic one, and it pulls it all apart, really. And I've actually got a table sync on this as well, a local table sync. So if you want a table sync, so this is, you can have a local table which is synced with the web service. So it updates the table, whatever your schedule is. If you want that to work, you need to edit your data profile and find the primary key, which in this case is number. Apex does all this for you. I just run it through the wizard. Choose the primary key. That's it, just slide that over. And then go into manage synchronization, set your table, and it's synced, and there was, last time it was 3 days ago, and you can change the schedule in there. Okay, let's go back. It gives me the get operation and some parameters that I need. I can just see if it's working, see if there's any bikes. Yeah, I've got some bikes here, that's good. Let's go back. Let's see now the email template. So if you've not used this, like I said, it's really, really powerful, really easy. Email templates. I create one called Bike Alert. And now I wanted like an easy, really simple email template. So this guy called Lee Monroe has created a responsive HTML email template. So I just copied all the bits into header, copied all the bits to body, copied into footer. And somewhere in the middle, it says, go get bike number, and it's surrounded by hashes. So that bike number, it's a parameter. So it says, hey, if you want to call it, just copy this code. Now it's gone a bit wrong here, but that should say bike number, and you can pass in a parameter. And that's how you, so I'll just copy that, and let's put that in an automation. Before I do that, I'll show you the dashboard. So this is the dashboard. It's a faceted search on a cards region, as we saw earlier. You get all this stuff for free, like the bike types and pie charts. There is a visualization. So there are 8 bikes there. That's the bike that I want. There are some classic bikes. And here, look, there's a tandem there as well. So I want now to run the automation. I'll talk you through the automation and then we'll run it. So it's this one. It's got the static ID. The type is a scheduled. So whenever I see this schedule expression, I really despair, really, because it means I have to go to ORCLAPEX or the documentation and try and work out how to create this syntax. But Apex has given this amazing interval builder. So you can say weekly, these days a week, 2 days a week, on this hour, on this minute, hourly, minutely. And when you say set execution interval, it sets all that for you. Schedule status is disabled while I'm doing this demo. I can easily set it to active. In fact, when you create an automation from scratch, it's always disabled. You need to activate it. Then actions are initiated on query, and the data source is REST. And the REST data source is this one. Wait for it. Novojenjahovska or Kova. It's not using the synchronization table. The synchronization table, why not? Because this is up to date and this was always behind. I've got an external order by, so I can change the filters to order by this column or this column. Or I can use an external filter where the help is no use at all because it's the wrong help. Just a copy and paste from that. On the post-processing, I'm saying where, now you can use SQL here, byte type equals 104, which is a cargo byte, and row number is less or equal to 1. So that's one way of meeting my requirement of just getting one email. Because I just say one tandem byte, please, or one classic byte, please. So that's one way. Now in SQL query and function returning query, you can select from that web service, like a local post-processing, like you do in Page Designer, but I cannot get it to work. Even though it works in Page Designer, it does not work in here. So SQL query and this one, I cannot get to work at all. These are parameters. This one's an Apex application item. I've got one action, my primary key column. So this, when I've been preparing for this presentation, this column has been disappearing frequently, too many to be coincidental. So there's some bug somewhere. So I always watch out now to see if that primary key column is there. Now, the actions execute when rows returned from the web service, or the actions are run when there's no rows returned. But you can't say this action when rows returned and this action, another action when no rows returned, which would be quite nice. If I need to do that, I need to just copy and paste the whole automation. I have two automations. I'm going to commit once, maximum rows to process. I could type 1 into there because I just want one email instead of all this row number less or equal than 1. But if I do that, the schedule is not a success. It's an incomplete because it says, well, there's more rows to process. And I didn't get to finish because I finished after 1 row, which doesn't kind of sit right with me because I purposely put 1 in there. So I'd like it to be a success. I'd like it to say, I've done what you asked to do. Error handlings ignore. I've got some more debug. I'm going to use this functions, get last run timestamp. Let's have a look at that. So get last run returns a timestamp, obviously of the get last run. Get last run timestamp returns a timestamp as well. But there are subtle differences. This one is for an application ID and a static ID of the automation. And this last run is all about the actions. So you can only run this within an action code or the query itself. But I just want to output them just to see what happens. And I've got before rows and I've got a clear down at the end. So in my email, really simple. It's just that send. It's a bit of debug. So email to, and then I use a bit of JSON, which says byte number is the column number underscore. And I'm using this apex string.format, which says if you see a %s, use that parameter. If you see another %s, use the second parameter. It's my current favorite Apex function is that apex string.format, and I'd recommend you use it. And in fact, write a note down now to research that after the presentation. It's really, really handy. In here, I've got SQL all messages appear in the execution log. And I guess we can run it. One last thing before we run it. Right, one last thing, the conditions. So these conditions, like I can understand these ones, exists, not exist, expression, Boolean. But when I initially popped this box up, I couldn't understand why we were talking about columns or current page or even what my client browser version is. So I was thinking, why do we need to know what the client browser version is when this is server-side scheduled job? Surely I'm not even in an Apex environment when I'm running this. And there's a valid reason for this. This is because of the on-demand automations. So when you're doing it on demand from an Apex session, yeah, we can check what client browser you're using at that point. So all these are valid. Oh, and I've got my I've got this as a condition to meet the requirement. I don't want spamming. So this just checks, has that run to a success in the last hour? And I will say a no rows returned on that. Yeah, a no rows returned on that. And then it would run and send me an email. So that's just as a comment there, but I would put it in there. Okay, let's save and run. Hopefully I've got a cargo bike and no one's taken it from that bike station. Yes, a success. So I've got any cargo bikes, maybe, success, one row, messages. So my messages, it's starting the automation. Now this is a session ID, 22. So it's not my session, 76, and it's not this session, 46. So that's curious, like what is that? But we'll find out more about that later. The last run is null because it's in an action. It's not in an action. This returns the last run before us. Send in an email and tell me the last run. And it doesn't say what this run is. It's always the last run. So I should get an email. So if I look at my temporary email. Aha, cargo bike available. The kids will be happy. A cargo bike is available near you. Go get bike 12620. That's the bike I wanted. Don't forget to top up your bike credit, of course. Good luck. Hope it's still there when you get there. Good. So that works, and that's my email template. I've got some other little buttons and stuff. I'm going to delete that. Good. So that's the automation that works now. Let's have a look at something else. Let's have a look at number 2. I'm looking for a particular bike. So this one is an on-demand, and I'm going to change to this. So this is page 5. This is what bike you're looking for. So I want to look for a particular bike, a cargo bike or a classic or a tandem. See how this like a 3-way switch is built? There's a little tip on that. So if you want a 3-way switch or a 4-way or how many elements you want on there, what it is a radio group, and in the template options, I display as a pill button. And if you set it as 3 columns and then give it a bit of width to span 6, and it looks quite nice. So I'm going to look for a tandem, and I'm going to say either run with filters, which is a post, or a dynamic action. They both work fine. I just wanted to check whether there was any difference between a post and the dynamic action. There is not. So this is my process. So what's calling is Apex Automation Execute. So this is another procedure in the API. You pass in the particular bike as the static ID, and you pass in filters. And the filter says, for this column, bike type, I want it to be equals to that item, P5 bike type. And because it's in a process that's already in session, if it's on a dynamic action, just remember to submit it before you use it. Okay, so let's see if we can grab that tandem. So run with filters. Job started, it just fingers crossed because someone could hire the bike at any time. And if we go to our execution log, I'm looking for a bike, 1 row, 3 messages, start an automation before row 1 in, send an email of bike 44, which hopefully is the bike I'm looking for, the tandem. 44, yep, I've got an email, yes. Bike 44, perfect. Let's delete that. So that's perfect. Just have a final look at our automation before we move on. See if there's anything interesting about it. Yeah, it's a query-based. It's a query-based one, and I've got no where clause here. And remember, these two I can't get working. So I've removed that where row num is less or equal than 1 because of the way the order of the filters work. So think of it this way: it gets the results in the REST data source, and then it does the where clause, so limiting down to 1 row, and then it puts the filters on, saying, give me a tandem bike. However, when it reduces it with the where clause, that 1 row might be the classic bike. And so it'll say there's no tandem bikes there. And maybe it should be like in the different order. Maybe it should do the filters first and then the where clause last. So because of this, I need to do my row limiting in a different way. So no where clause there. Now I could do the 1 row to process, but I said I'm not too keen on that. In my action here, what I'm doing is I want to check whether that email has been sent. So I'll keep a track of it, and I'm going to use this GX01. This is used for Apex Ajax callbacks, really. I'm just going to borrow it here. I'm just going to say, if you've not sent an email and you're the bike that I'm looking for. Now, I don't have to do this, P5 bike type, but it just shows you that I don't have to do it because it's already filtered. But I'm just showing you that I can access my page session values in an automation when I run it on demand. So more debugs. I'm going to set this GX01 because I found the bike that I'm looking for to be true. So this is a string. This is a Boolean. So why didn't I just write the word true in there? It's because I don't kind of like literals in the code. So I'd like to say this gives you the lowercase string of the word true. You want to use this as well. It's very handy. In fact, write that down under apex string.format to research after the meeting because that's really handy to use. Then I'm going to send my email. And then if you've already sent it, I'm going to use the skip over current row as email sent. Okay, I could use this apex automation exit. So once we send email, just get out of here. We found the byte, stop it. But this overall status of the log is aborted. And I don't like that either. So I'm going to stick with that. In my run, I'm going to search for a classic bike because there's a few of those. So we'll run that. Job started, good. Execution log. Now I've got 8. So start an automation, found a classic bike, send an email, skip, 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 skip. So that's another way of bouncing over rows, skipping rows, and it just demonstrates the API. Okay, let's move on. So in automations, we've done 1 and 2. So I've got curious about this session. What is this session that it runs as? And just tell me more about it. So I've got this, we'll call tell me more about yourself. And I've got 3 actions and they don't order in the right order. So normally in Apex, you see things top to bottom, like run the first and the second. So you've got to really concentrate on which ones they're running. So I've got more init code here, and I say Apex debug enable level 9, and I said to myself, nice try, because I could not get the debug. I was looking in the regular debug. I was trying to hack the debug pages. I was trying to go into monitor session. I was trying to find it. I couldn't get the debug. But I'm going to turn it on here, and then I'm going to use an action to scrape out the debug, and you can see what it's doing. So first off is what's my session? So when we say what's my session, I've got a cursor that says, give me everything about my session. And all this JSON business is just writing out all the columns and all the values. Then I say, give me some user environment variables and the same output, just give me the columns to JSON. Yep. Now at this point, I want to go to action 20. I know quite like that left and right arrows that you get on what they call list navigation list entries, but it doesn't exist. Maybe in the future it would. So you need to go back, wait for the screen to refresh, move the mouse up and down, and then go to debug log. So here, I'm going to use my utility package again. I'm just going to copy all the debug out and put it into the execution log. And then finally, you can use these bind variables in actions. And they've got these clever names, apex $, and then row num. Row pk, primary key, row num, errors, plus run ISO. The top 3 are for query based. So if it's non-query based like this one, it's null. And you always get a last run in the ISO date format. So I'm going to cancel that. And let's run it, save and run. Let's close that. Okay, look at that, 59 messages. So let's start at the beginning. So start an automation. What's my session? So workspace username is nobody. So whenever you see nobody, you've gone to, for example, the login page, but you're not logged in yet. So I've got an Apex session, and here's my session ID. I'm not authenticated with Apex. The database uses Apex user, which is great because it uses all the access that my table would use, that my Apex application would use. For the workspace, it's aligned to. The host user is Oracle. All right, so it's connecting from Apex to its database and uses Oracle. And then I'm scraping all my debug out, so I can see every single decision that the Apex is making in deciding to run this automation. And you would never see this because you can't get to it. So that's handy for debugging. And then I've got the final 4 columns, like I said, is 3 and null, and we've got a timestamp there. So just turning on debug and then selecting from the debug log tables in metadata, you can find out more about the decisions it's making. Let's look at one more. So this is about use cases now. So this application here, let's log out. Yeah, so this is a multilingual application. I can change from English to Polish. So I've not done any translations actually, but if I get my username wrong, Chrome's probably going to auto-translate. You can see it's Polish, yeah. So that's the Polish application. So when you're creating a multilingual application, if you create a change or a new page or a new region or item, and you switch to your translated application, you don't see those changes unless you seed and publish. And that's a kind of a long process. You need to go to share components. You need to find the translated applications there. You need to click on the application language. You need to select all the languages you want to translate. You need to seed. You need to apply. You need to wait a few seconds, cancel out, do the exact same thing for publish. And it's just time consuming. So I thought, hey, we could just do an automation so we can just do it in one click. So I'll run the automation there in the execution log. You see this? Where's my execution log? So this is a minor gripe that I've got with automations, is that you cannot tell if something's still running. You cannot tell if something's still running, which would be quite nice if it just had the start time stamp and it just said, I'm running or in progress. And then you could see and you could output it and you can make a page and you could show what status it is in, but you can't see any of that. So you don't know if you've got an error in the code and it's not worked or it's still running. So if I click on it again, hopefully it has run. Yes, it has run. So in one click, I know that it took 5 seconds to seed, and I know it took 17 seconds, wow, to publish the application. Oh, so the other way around, 17 seconds to seed, 5 seconds to publish. So I can set that as a schedule now. I can set that to run maybe every hour while I'm developing, so I get the applications for all the languages in sync, so that I'm not surprised when I create a component only to see that it's not being visible in my translated application. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. Okay, there are some views. If you go to Workspace Utilities, Application Express Views, type in Automations, you see the Automations views. So this gives you everything about the automations, the settings, parameters, all sorts. And then there's the actions. So the last one had 1 action, the one before that 3 actions for automation. And then there's the log, and then there's the message log. So the automations, the parent is applications, the log, the parent is automations, message log, the parent is log, and the automation actions is wrong because that should say Apple automations in there, not applications. So that needs a little fix on there, the documentation. Right, so use cases first. So it's ideal if you've got any long running tasks. So if you've got a button that says process and it takes 5 minutes to come back to the user, maybe you could give them the option, just click the button and wait. Or you could say, click the button and I'll run it in the background in an automation or an on-demand automation. And then you can use the rest of the application and then we could email you it, use an automated email, or you could just come back to the page and we'll tell you if it's done or not. So that would be a great example for automations of long running tasks. Automating emails, like my next bike example, automating emails or sending business emails around. A lot of Apex applications use data loads, moving data around in the night. I've got a project right now which I'm going to do that for. Data archiving, just moving data around, DBA tasks. Snapshot refreshing, if you want to do it by a job rather than an automatic one. I used to work on this project where I had so much debug messages, even clicking on the debug link took many seconds before it would appear. So maybe you could just clear down the debug. There's an API for that. Translated applications for seed and publish. I just showed you that. I'm not using anything special. I'm just using the Apex lang package for publish and seed, and there's API for that. You can back up. You can export the application. You can export to a cloud continuous integration. Maybe you could expire locking inactive accounts. So maybe if someone's finished with a job or left the company, you could wait to that night to send service desk an email to say inactive that account. So that will be a good use case. Okay, some frequently asked questions. Right, so first question is by myself. So do automations start firing off whenever you import an application? So when you export an application, the automations are exported with it. When you import it, are they disabled or do they just start kicking off and firing off straight away? Yeah, they do. They fire off straight away, which I was a little bit surprised about. But because this runs in the scope of the Apex application, I thought, well, maybe if I just set the application status to unavailable, you know, there's unavailable or available for developers only or with a message. So I've set it to unavailable and awaited to see if an automation fired. And it did. They all kicked off and started running. So it didn't respect the application status, which I thought it might do. Which user does the job run as? Apex user, well, of course, and it's much better that it does do that. Does it run with an Apex session? Indeed, it does. So you can use anything or any Apex API, including the ones that require a session, like Apex collection and some of the user procedures within Apex user. And the user is nobody. And your logs are in this database view, meta view, Apex automation message log. And the benefit of using automations of a DBA scheduler, well, if you love a user interface and you want to run it in the context of your application, then I would use automations, yeah, consider using it. If it was maybe a DBA task, which was just examining some table spaces, well, that's really nothing to do with your application. So maybe not do that in an Apex automation. Maybe just leave that to the DBA or DBA scheduler. Okay, some minor annoyances. So error logging, I found that quite difficult to log when I wanted it to log, and the order that things came out in. Found limiting queries to one record was a little bit tricky. You cannot log messages in any of the code blocks. This thing where when you have a REST data source, the parameters are applied first, which is like the city and the place of the next bike. Then it's the where clause, so I'm limiting the rows, and then the filters. I think just the last two should be the other way around. I couldn't get the local post-processing working. Sorry, the where clause worked. It'd be nice to access some run variables, like in my PL SQL code, I could ask, well, which run are we doing and which automation and which step are we on? That might be quite nice for debugging and putting like logger logs or something like that. All actions are PL SQL, which I expect us to change. Actions don't order properly, that's a minor annoyance. But they run in sequence, because that's the important thing. I'd like to add some actions for results found in the query and others for no results found. No indication that's running until complete is a minor annoyance, and some primary key keeps disappearing, which happen too many times to be coincidental. I've already got 4 likes, but these are big likes. It's I like it a lot. It's great to use the UI. I like using it because you're in Apex, and you can. There's nothing special to think about when you deploy. It's all built into application export. Schedule Builder is great. It saves you reading the documentation. It runs in an Apex session, so you can use all those things that require a session to work. And you don't have to worry about table access, which historically I did when I was using my scheduler. I needed to check, if I had the correct access that first, if it was run from a user session. But I like it a lot. So that's it. Come visit us on this website, www.pretius.com. My details are here. If you want to contact me, follow me on Twitter. You can follow Pretius as well. Visit us on Facebook. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, before we end the session tonight, we one of the attendees has asked me if they could show a little demo that they've done. It's about automatic theme switching of the app depending on your device settings for dark or light mode. So if you just give me a moment, I can promote this person to do it. The name is Plamen Mushkov. I hope I've pronounced that right. And he should be joining in a second. There we go.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, we can hear you. All good.
Okay, just a second to start the camera. And here we go. So, guys, I wanted to end up the sessions today with something that I find useful, in particular in nowadays where people prefer dark modes for their devices. I initially didn't realize that it is a capability of the browser that can detect what your device is set to. And it turns out that it is possible with CSS and JavaScript. So Apex can easily detect your device settings and automatically switch your application to dark or white mode. Let me introduce myself. My name is Plamen, and I'm a senior Apex developer at Insum. Insum is an Apex consulting company in North America. And they have allowed me to work on this regarding a project that we have for a client. The client requires an option to switch the themes between dark and light. And they have a requirement that the user can choose between automatic switch or a manual switch. So I'll show you both use cases. Now, if we can think of the team switching, this is one of the option, automatic switch, but it also can be scheduled to switch your team depending on what is the time. If it is dark, to turn it into a dark mode. If it is during the day, to turn it into a light mode. Or, for example, if you have an application that is doing some saving of energy and wants to turn your mode into a dark one for a specific time of the day to save energy for some reason. If you remember, last week it was the Earth Day, and we could turn off our lights for an hour. So this was a good example how you can turn on your application team for just 1 hour into dark mode. So another option is to use your device settings, as we said, and a hybrid where the user can choose between manual and automatic switch. Now, there are different approaches to this problem. One of the approach is if you create 2 different team styles in your Apex application. You can create one that is styled in light colors and one that is styled in dark colors. For the second one, you can have only one team style and use 2 different CSS styles, light mode.css and dark mode.css, and switch them using the Apex APIs. And the other option is to use something that Apex have done themselves on the application builder. They're using a CSS to detect those settings, and the switches on the fly. You see it immediately when you switch your device's settings. So right now, I want to switch directly to the demo because I don't want to waste too much time. And here is our demo application. I'm going to show you first the approach that Oracle Apex team is using to switch the team style. I have a file in the static application files that is called global.css. If I open it, on top, I have this little piece of JavaScript code. If I uncomment that one, you can see that it is basically doing the following. If this option is dark, then the style is applied to your page. If it detects a white theme, then it applies the other way. The body color will be white and the text color will be black. So right now I'm going to save my global CSS file, and I'm going to refresh my application. Now everything is white. As you can see, all the regions are white. The colors are in light colors. So now I'm going to change my device settings. Right now I'm on a Mac machine, but it is working with anything. You can try it on your iPhone or Android phone. It is basically doing the same. So if I switch to dark and I go back to the page, you see an immediate effect. I didn't refresh the page. It automatically switched the colors to dark. If I switch back to light, it is automatically changing to the white settings. So let's deactivate that one. And I'm going to show you the second version, which is having two different theme styles in your application. Okay, if I go to the theme rower, I have defined two different theme styles here. One is for the white mode and one is for the dark mode. If we scroll down, I have some custom CSS here, which is basically the color settings. As you can see, I have quite a lot of CSS on this application. So it has rounded edges and so on. And the question is, how do we switch between the two themes that we have? Apex have an API that is responsible for that change. And if you go to the documentation, the API reference, and you open the Apex theme page, you can see several methods here. You have set current style, set session style, and set user style. So what is the difference? Set current style sets the theme style for everyone. A use case for that would be if you're administrator of the application and you want to do a change that is applied for everyone. No matter of the user preferences, you can change the theme style of all the users of your application. The other one, set session style, is valid only until the session is over. So if you walk into your application and apply this procedure, it will change your theme style, and the change will be gone after you log out. The final one that I have used in my setup is set user style. What it does is it remembers your preference, and the next time you walk into the application, you see the theme that you have selected previously. It doesn't change after the session is expired. And now, what are the steps to create this manual switching? First, let me demonstrate how it looks like on the interface. Now I'm going to manual mode, and I have two options, dark and light theme. The only downside that I see with this approach is that you need a page refresh in order to apply the changes. So, for example, if I switch to dark theme, in the background, there is a process that is doing it. It's a dynamic action, and this dynamic action needs a refresh of the page after it's executed in order to apply the style. And the whole setup starts with a few settings on my application. First of all, I need to go to the shared components and define the so-called application settings. I don't know how familiar are you with that, but the application settings is a great way to keep a setting for a user that is available every time he's logged into the application. For example, if I prefer to see a particular theme style, I can define it in the application setting. And here I have created two of those settings. One is theme style mode, where user can select if he wants to use a manual mode or an automatic mode. And the second one is the name of the theme style. And here are my default names for my themes. They are the same as the ones I showed you in the application. The second thing that we need is to to global items, and they are going to be set when the user is logged into the application. And this thing is happening with computation. Again, it is something that is happening when the user is logged into the application. If I go to the first one, for example, you can see that using this API, I can set the theme style mode with some particular value. And it is exactly the value that is taken from the application setting variable that you saw before. This thing is available also in the API reference, and it is under Apex app settings. You can get a value of the application settings, and you can also set a value of an application setting. Now, the final step is to create a region that is doing the switch. I have created it a little bigger here on the page, so that is easy for demonstration purposes, but usually I could imagine it here in the header with a little switch between dark and light. So I have created it in a global page. And this is a very simple setup. We have a radio group with two different options, manual and auto, and a second radio group that is having the names of the different theme styles, dark and light. I also have a dynamic action here. For the manual mode, I have those two. First, the first one is responsible for the first radio group, and the second one is responsible for the second radio group. So here, if the radio group is changed, then I execute a simple code that is first setting the global variables, the name of the theme style, and then it is applying the user-defined style. This is again using the API that I showed you. The downside that that we spoke about is that a page submit is required in order to have the changes in place. And for the auto mode, I have another process that is run on the page load. So now I'm going to an auto mode. And you can see that the page immediately detected that I am in light mode. If I switch to dark and I reload, it is going to check if my mode has changed, and if it has, it is applying the dark theme. So this is happening using that dynamic process. By the way, if you see here, the app builder changed the theme style as well. So, and it also has a similar option here to change the between dark and light mode. So this is the simple JavaScript code that is detecting your device settings. So here I'm checking if my device is in dark mode, execute the true action. If it's not in dark mode, execute the false option. And here I'm checking what is the default theme that is set. It is dark. okay, so we don't do anything. It is already dark. But if it has detected that my device is in light mode, then it should apply the switch of the theme style and update at the same time the elements on the page. This is the flag that the theme has changed and that the theme style name has also changed. Any questions?
No, I don't think we have any, Plamen, and we don't have any in the Q&A section.
By the way, I have a full blog post about that feature. So if you're interested, you can go to my blog, which is apexaplab.dev. You can find everything about that feature there and the different scenarios that you can try in your application.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. So yeah, if anybody else has anything they'd like to present, no matter how big or small it is, then feel free to reach out to myself or any of the other co-chairs, and we'll look how we can fit you in at one of the future meetups. Thank you all for attending tonight. When we do end the webinar, you should hopefully get sent to SurveyMonkey page. So if you could give us some feedback on the presentations tonight, and that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for your time, and stay safe. Bye-bye.